La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Benvenuti at La Lanterna podcast. This is Fabrizio from Toronto with my best buddy.
Hey, it's Matt. How's it going, Fabry? How you doing?
I'm quite good. How can we start about this mixed feelings, I guess, type of match?
It's a difficult one. We're recording this one a couple of days after I had a little bit more of a chance to kind of, I guess, let the result soak in. But I'm not sure, we started off with such an early goal. I wouldn't say we were completely dominant in the first half, but I still think, yes, it's Serie B. Yes, we're going to drop points, but it is disappointing to drop some points in the end of the match that way. And these things, again, they do happen. It's no disrespect to Como, but I do kind of feel as a Genoa fan, you don't want to see those points dropped, of course.
No, I'm still a little bit shaken. So first of all, I guess we're talking about Genoa at Como.
Yes.
Serie B match day 32, and it ended 2-2. We started strongly, I would say, with the match. We started with basically a 2-0 lead within the first half of the second half.
Yeah.
First part of the second half. Having said that, I would think that the last 10 minutes of the first half, and the last 15 minutes of the second half are the ones that did it for us. Well, not the first half. That should have been a little bit of a wake-up call, but especially the last 15 minutes of the second half is what made that different. Where I saw the issues were a disconnect between the midfield and the back lines. We did have different missing players in our lineup, specifically where I'm referring to Bani, which was replaced by Ilsanker. And already on the second match in a row, we're starting to see a little bit of hiccups with respects to mistakes that are happening. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure Ilsanker had a phenomenal game. I don't think anybody objectively would see that necessarily as well. But also, I think what you pointed to though at the beginning is, for me, is actually more of my takeaway. I don't look at it as we had Ilsanker, we didn't have Bani, that type of a thing. I think obviously, this football, of course, it comes down to the margins a lot of times in a lot of these games. We're not going to steamroll teams all the time. In fact, most cases, we're not going to. And as you rightly said, yes, we looked the better team for the first, call it 25 minutes or so of the first half. We get the goal from Strootman relatively early on.
Beautiful goal, by the way.
Wonderful goal. He's just got this flair for like these outside of the box goals. It's always so wonderful to see those go in.
Actually, let's hear the audio for that goal. I have to listen to it again.
Yeah. So enjoy the good stuff while we can.
I think Crescito was the target there. And again, they give it away on the edge of their box. And they pay for it this time. It seemed almost inevitable. And the quality of Kevin Strootman shows itself. Genoa go in front. Como have made all their own problems in a sequence of passages of play over the last 5 minutes. Gomes, that's not a good throw by him. Cunha couldn't take it. And Strootman read the script to perfection. But they've given it away all too often in front of their own penalty box.
Fantastic goal. But you have to also say, you saw it again at the end of the first half. We saw this again happen to us at the end of the second half. Como came into their own. They had life at the end of that match. They had a couple of pretty good chances, I would say. Ultimately, they were denied by Martinez or by maybe he had a block or two in there, but they were getting really dangerous places at the end of that first half. Obviously, when you look at just the stats of the match, so Genoa, despite this, we end up getting, as you say, about 15 minutes or so after a little bit less than after the start of the second half, we get another goal from Massimo Coda, making it 2-0. We actually had a penalty that was called back, but it didn't matter because Cutrone leveled back at the 62nd minute.
Before you say that, but let's not forget the post that Coda caught as well.
Yes. Yeah.
That was still on a 2-0.
So a little bit unlucky there in some ways. And, again, what's encouraging with this game is in the last several is Massimo Coda has been on the mark for us, which is great. We had a handful of substitutions that took place in the 76th minute. I don't think any of these were unreasonable, although it is a little bit interesting. Sylvain Hefti coming on for Ilsanker at that period of time. What did you make of that? How did you think that was something? I wonder sometimes a little bit, maybe this player is too young, but looking at our defense and looking at a player like Maturo or someone else, why we're not seeing him come in and having Hefti come in, who obviously typically more so fullback for Ilsanker, I thought was sort of an interesting decision. What did you think about that?
Well, I think first of all, Maturo, I think is a little bit too not ready yet. In fact, I did see him more involved in the Primavera, and I think that's a good call from the experts to make him, get those minutes on his legs, but also with a little bit a different type of quality. And besides, right now we're in the need of points, and we can't really do lots of experiments and so on. He is young. I think he's 19, but he will have that potential. I don't think he's just right there yet. Having said that, if he's not ready now, when is he going to be ready? But these type of players can explode even by just because of one match. What do I think about Hefti himself? I think, well, obviously that was the better choice out of the two, in my opinion. I don't think Hefti did bring, but nobody really did. So it's nothing against Hefti. Nobody really brought that change in gear when the players came in.
Yeah, I mean, I like Hefti as a player myself. I think it does highlight, obviously, we're thin, injury thin, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, in the center back position, and especially when we tend to start with three players as central defenders, as we have in the last several matches. It just spreads us that much more thin, of course. If you look by some of the match rating sites, Hefti was actually rated as our worst player in the moments that he came in. I think probably also because he happened to come in and shortly thereafter, Como ended up getting their second goal. And ultimately, that's where the match ends at 2-2. I'm not trying to say directly that Hefti is the reason why we can see the second goal, but
correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Hefti that didn't catch the forward, or was it Ilsanker? Because from my recollection, it was Ilsanker, but I could be wrong.
Well, Ilsanker was subbed off before the second goal.
That's right. You're right.
So I think, there could have been something that
then it would have been Hefti, yeah.
And so he didn't have really that much time in to get his footing in the match. He only played for 14 minutes. But again, like a pretty poor rating of 5.8, at least as far as SofaScore is concerned. And not to be too far kind of paying attention to those types of things, but I think sometimes it's easy to say, well, Ilsanker or whatever. I don't think it's Hefti either, to be clear. I'm not saying that, but I do think that we're seeing this a little bit where we're kind of losing, I don't know what it is. I don't want to necessarily say we're losing discipline, but something's kind of happening towards the end of this match. Again, we saw it a little bit as well. Regina, a really difficult opponent, could have been 1-1 at the end of that match. We're seeing, again, away at Como, we dropped those points. I think at the end of the day, we get a point away from home. Unfortunately, to see Fabry win kind of puts us in, and I know we'll talk about the match week on the whole in a minute, but that puts us at a little bit more of a disadvantage than maybe we were hoping to have in terms of a fight to keep on to that automatic relegation, or automatic, that's the wrong slip. Automatic promotion position, and then be a little bit farther away, of course, from being in that title winning position. But it's still, at the end of this, is a point away from home against a side that I would say was in relatively pretty good form. And I kind of, one of those where you look at it with kind of clear eyes, it's kind of like, okay, we move on. But still, it is a little disappointing not to have that positive result, because we did have it. We had that 2-0 advantage.
No, I did listen to Gilardino's press conference, and I think they were quite quite reassuring. Obviously, he did say that there is going to be some analysis that he's going to do on the video and understand where to fix and where to address whatever happened there. He did talk, as I mentioned before, about the disconnect between the back and the center lines, and that's why there were a lot of too many of those balls and pressure and kicks in our back, because that was almost, if I may recollect, a long time that we haven't seen so many shots on goal against us per se. Having said that, you're right. I think it's just something that we need to put into our pocket. It's done. There's lessons learned definitely always to be taken. We haven't lost, which with a side like Como, that could have happened, especially on that match. But let's hear a quick analysis from our friend Will from Italy about what he thinks how the match went.
Hi Fabry, hi Matt, it's Will here, and yeah, I'm gonna do a brief analysis about the match against Como. It's been a good match, at least in the first half. We did our job, we did what we can do best. I saw a great Stratman, a great Koda, is getting up to his game yet again. However, we do have to say that we lost 2 points. There's nothing to be disappointed about it, because, little slip-ups during a season can happen, but there's nothing to worry about. The team has played good, the squad is there. We don't have to, panic or anything, because fate is in our hands, and we will go to Syria. Definitely, we have the team.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate your analysis. I don't like really to do this, but essentially to your point, what you were trying to say was just about 10 minutes to the end of the match, we were essentially 4 points to Frosinone.
Right.
And 6 points away from Bari on the third spot. Now it's different, the opposite, meaning we're 6 points to Frosinone and now 4 points Bari below us.
Yep.
And again, that's also actually, no, I should have probably increased the one from Bari, because they just scored they had scored also on the 94th minute.
Right.
Against Südtirol, which was a match that we were expecting with high expectations and so on, and they got that last minute goal, a huge mistake, a fluke from their defender. I don't know if you had a chance to look at their goal.
I didn't see it, no.
Bari looked quite strong, but also that mistake, if I may say, because the defender didn't mark the forward well enough, and the goal just went in, and that also brought Bari winning, bringing the 3 points rather than the 2.
Mm-hmm.
We were tying, so 1 point up rather than 3. So that kind of changed things in the last few minutes, which I guess one of those things that you should not be looking at others and just look at our own match. And to that point is no. I was reassured by Gilardino's words, so I think that he's going to be addressing any situation or issue that there might be. Obviously, he will have his pet talk with the players, and at the same time, perhaps analyze, rejig. I don't know. Bani is back. Sturaro's not. Vogliacco is out because of the the yellow card. So he was already cautioned. So he's going to skip one. Mm-hmm. We have to think about Gudmundsson also. He is cautioned as well. So the next yellow means another red card. So the earlier the better. I don't know. Or hopefully nothing will ever happen. Nevertheless, so that's the situation.
Yeah, and I think obviously, like to your point, the chances on goal is sort of uncharacteristic from Genoa. I think that's, as a Genoa fan, you kind of look at this and maybe think, and I was talking about, we've had some moments in some recent games where it seemed like we've maybe let more chances in lately, but I think on the whole, this is not something we usually see from this side. So you do have some faith that Gila is going to turn it around pretty quickly. But, the other way to think about this, to your point, in a way, we're kind of lucky to have a point from this match. When you look at the actual statistics and how this kind of shook out, 19 total shots from Como to 10 to Genoa, 6 shots on target from Como to 2.
But Matt, I don't personally, just hear me out for a second. I don't think that reflects well what the match was.
Well, I mean, look at this. Listen, like when you break it down to some of the big chances created, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
But there are two different ways of looking at this match. When you think about like our the total time of the 90 minutes and how often Genoa were on top or seeming the better side. Yes, Genoa for most of that match had that kind of, we looked like we could do something with it, but we didn't. When you look at the big chances created, 6 to Como, 1 to Genoa. Think about Strootman's goal. That's a shot that usually does not go in.
That's true.
When you consider, like, we had a shot that went off the woodwork, unlucky. We had a goal from Strootman from way outside the box. I would say somewhat fortunate. I know he's really good at scoring those goals. You don't expect to score those goals all the time. In a traditional sense, that type of a goal isn't really a reflection of fantastic play from Genoa. We're just fortunate to have a player like Strootman in the side.
Yeah.
So when you consider that, like, they had many more chances that were clear cut, this is a goal scoring opportunity, and we did not. And when you think about it from that angle, despite the fact that they were not dominating the match, looking at this match, you're not going to expect Como to dominate the match. You're not going to expect Como to be 70% possession to Genoa 30%. That's not how they're trying to play the game. They're looking for their moments from which they can get points out of this match and from which they can create their chances. And they absolutely did that. And so when you think about it from the standpoint of, we had, Coda coming in again, doing his job. We had some brilliance from Strootman. Otherwise, we had good possession and not much else. I think in a way you look at this and say, hey, we got a point from this match. And I know that's maybe counterintuitive given we're 2-0 up. I still agree, when you're 2-0 up, you need to be able to shut this match down and get those 3 points. I completely agree with that. But on the whole, we gave them many more opportunities to take advantage of this game than we should have. And I think the draw in the end is at least probably a fair result, if not one that the Genoa could have even made out of worse had Como been better with some of the chances that they were given.
No, I agree. As I said before, this is definitely something that needs to be reflected, and Gilardino has to analyze what went wrong in the tactical formation, because in most of the game it worked. But that little part that it didn't work, it actually went very bad.
Right.
So yeah,
I mean, definitely 13 shots inside the box. Like, how often do we see Genoa do that? It's very unusual for.
And by the way, a lot of people are talking about Strootman, but I think the MVP for me, for Genoa's perspective, is definitely Martinez, because it could have been a lot more.
But I agree with you. And I think, I love seeing keepers play out of their skin and have great matches, and Martinez has been one of our best players. Obviously, like, we have, it's in a way, I'm knocking on some wood, but I'm hoping it's obvious that this match has alarm bells going off in Gila's mind, and that's probably the best positive that us as Genoano can take from the match on the whole. We're about to enter a critical stretch of this remaining season in Serie B. I don't need to remind any of our fellow Grifone that we have not locked in automatic promotion places at all. And we can't keep going match after match after match with Martinez as our best player. We can't.
I agree.
We fundamentally cannot do that. And it's these past two specifically, that's him, but it's not, an isolation that's happening. So I have faith, as I know you do, that Gila is going to recognize this, that the team is going to address what's going on. The return, at least of Bani, is definitely a plus. But I don't think that this is, well, we had to have Ilsanker, so, we conceded a lot of chances. I think that's completely incorrect. I think we, as a team, need to realize and recalibrate and say, how can we make sure we collectively are not letting this happen? What's going wrong positionally, what's going wrong communication wise, as you rightly mentioned. I think that's part of it. And I think as well, we do need to figure out a little bit more of, especially with the Goodmanson thing, is a real worry. We need to make sure that we got 2 goals in this match, but I do think there's opportunity for us to be maybe perhaps a little bit more positive in that final third, and we've got to find the right way of unlocking that. Maybe we see Ekuban stepping in more. I know he's been kind of a super sub for us in the last several matches as he's getting back to his match fitness, and that's the right thing to do. But we've got to recalibrate. But I would be wrong to say that I don't feel doom and gloom about this. But I just think that it is something that
it's a good wake up call.
It's a warning sign, yeah.
It's a good, rather than a warning sign, I think it's a wake up call for the last 6 matches.
Yeah,
and it's better now than,
yes,
you know what I mean? Like it's closer and tighter and so on. Mm-hmm. So it brings awareness and takes away that, the feeling of we are better, we are superior, so we can win against anyone. And maybe it makes it a little bit, more aware of the difficulty, the importance of these last 6 matches, not to sit back and actually pull up their sleeves. Well, they're saying it too, but it's also a mental type of a wake up call too as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so having said that, let's go quickly to match day 32 for Serie B. We have opened it, so it was all on Pasquetta, so Easter Monday.
That's right.
And we all played basically on that day, some a little bit earlier, some a little bit later, but opens with Benevento Spal. Talked about that it's at the bottom table, and actually Benevento almost condemned themselves by losing at home against Spal. Spal woke up with a 3-1. Seemed like that the Ninja has created his type of approach of style, and Nainggolan essentially I'm talking about, that basically created these chances. Then we had Regina Venezia. We had eyes on that one because it was interesting for the fact of these two, former strong teams and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Regina falling a little bit outside on the playoffs, but now come totally back in, putting Venezia a little bit on the danger area. Not too much yet, but they're sitting on the 14th, but they were hoping probably to get back up anyways. Regina wins 1-0. Next match, which was an important one, both for the Cittadella fans, with Jake, it's going to be our next guest, essentially, next week, unless he just totally says, no, I'm too scared and I can't. But we had at Cittadella, Parma winning 1-0. So that brings Parma actually within the playoffs. So that's definitely something that they are trying to achieve. And needless to say that. Mm-hmm. The next one after that is Perugia, which is our next match for this weekend, that played at home against Modena. Now, Modena is one of those weird teams. We remember it not too long ago. And they actually won at home at Perugia, 1-0. Putting the Grifoni from the central part of Italy a little bit into that dark area zone of playouts. Then we had Como Genoa, as we talked about, 2-2. And the other one that we were looking at, hoping that Ascoli could do that miracle that we've been seeing a little bit lately, but they didn't manage to do that. So for Frosinone winning an easy 2-0 or almost easy 2-0 against Ascoli. Sud Tirol Bari. So this one we basically touched about it a few minutes ago, and essentially eyes on was on that match. I guess the best outcome for that match would have been a tie. Yeah. Bari at the 90th plus 4 minutes in injury time managed to score away at Bolzano, and so therefore winning, getting closer to Genoa still in the third spot, but also distancing a little bit Sud Tirol for the third spot, which are important anyways, those placements also for playoffs anyways. Mm-hmm. Brescia-Ternana, Brescia, which we knew how in a difficult situation they were. Ternana, we know how difficult of a team it can be when you play against them, actually managed to win 1-0. So brings a little bit up their hopes again. They're still in second last, not anymore last. But, everything can happen, as we know. But they're sitting, we'll talk about the standings right after, but 1 point to the third last, which is at the very, very least what they want to aim for the playoffs. Then we have second last is Pisa-Cagliari, anticipated match because two big teams that are both aiming for the playoffs. Actually, it was a stalemate, so it was a 0-0. Mm-hmm. And nobody managed to have an edge over the other one. Last but not least, Cosenza managed to get an important point out of Palermo. So Palermo 0, Cosenza 0 gives Cosenza that point, just 2 points now, outside of the relegation area. Kudos to them. And it's Palermo on the other side was looking for points to get into the playoffs, and they're just sitting just outside for 3 points now, outside of the playoff area. So that brings us the standings to Frosinone first with 66, 6 points below. So it's like if we went 2 matches ago.
Right.
Not really much change if you look at it from 2 matches ago, but at 60 points. Then third spot, 4 points below us, is Bari at 56. 4 points below now is Südtirol at 52. 4 points now. Look at these. It's starting to get a little bit wider, right? Instead of 1 or 2 points, now it's starting to be 4 points. Below them is Regina. Still those points to be deducted. We don't know and how many. And then we have a whole bunch of teams now. So Regina sitting at 5th at 48. 47, we have Cagliari and Parma at the same. At the 8th, last spot for playoffs is Pisa at 46, so 1 point below those duo. Then there's a 3-point gap, as I mentioned before, on the 9th spot for Palermo for 43, 1 point below Modena at 10th. Then Como, Ternana at 40, 1 point below is Ascoli on the 13th spot. Then Venezia, 36 points, so 3 points below Ascoli, together with Cittadella and Cosenza. So 14, 15, 16 spot, all the same points. Then you have that group at the bottom. So the 2 play-outs are Perugia and Spal with 34 and 32, while the last 2 are Brescia with 31 and Benevento with 29. Still, everything is possible. 6 matches to go, 18 points. It's important for everyone.
And if am I mistaken, Fabry, in understanding the playout spots at the bottom are the 16th and 17th position, and the bottom 3 are all automatically down?
That's correct. Sorry, I was saying that incorrectly, but you're right.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to. Yeah, it's I guess for listeners that maybe are less familiar with the promotion relegation in Serie B, because this is, I think, somewhat different than some of the leagues. 18, 19, 20 all going straight down. 16 and 17 actually have a play-in match. They play against the teams from Serie C. Am I right about that? Is that how that works?
The bottom 3 go down directly. The 4th last and the 5th last, so right now are Cosenza and Perugia, will be playing against each other, 2 legs, in order to determine the winner. What happens if they are tied? So let's say if the first leg gets 0-0, the second leg gets 0-0, it goes to extra time and then penalties.
Got it.
While a little bit more complicated on the playoffs, so these are for promotion to Serie A. It's from the 3rd to the 8th. So these are 6 teams.
Yeah.
5th plays against the 8th, the 6th against the 7th. It's a 2-leg thing. And then they play again. The winners of those 2 play against the 3rd and the 4th.
Yeah, there's kind of like a playoff in American sports. I guess it's maybe similar in Canada. There's the quote unquote like the bye. So if you're in like that 3rd or 4th position, you at least have the advantage of being in the final driver's seat for going up.
I guess similarly to Coppa Italia. So in Serie A, if your placement determines what point are you going to be starting Coppa Italia, if you're going to start in the round of 16 or the round of 32, or go further down that totem pole. So if you're like in the top 8, you will start from the quarterfinals or round of 16, something like that.
And the kind of tricky thing with this, if I'm also not mistaken, of those 6, only one of those teams is going up to Serie A.
Yes, exactly.
So you still will have, obviously you've got the up to 8th place. It gives you a chance to get that promotion, but you still need to ultimately knock down whoever's last left standing of that group to go up to the promotional window. So
I had several conversations with different Italians, and they have difficulties in grasping this concept of the playoffs. Well, for North American sports, we're all used to that. I mean, I'm not that used to because I don't really follow too much difference to all the other different forms, but I know enough. You're probably more expert on speaking about it, but nevertheless, it's quite normal on any type of sports to have the playoffs type of structure. From an Italian perspective, they say, well, why me playing so hard and arriving 3rd, I might not even be promoted, and the 8th one can make it through and go and steal my spot. But I'm trying to explain to him, they're not stealing your spot, third spot, because your thinking in the past used to be that way. But essentially, you have to get within that group in order to play it, to get through. You're lucky that there aren't playoffs all the way to the top.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand the perspective of it. I mean, it's certainly it's kind of a fickle position if you're in that third spot. I mean, and it's why, holding on to that automatic promotion position is so important.
Important, yeah.
I think for fans that maybe are following other leagues throughout Europe, you might be thinking about the English Championship, the second division in England, with the famous richest game in the world, the side that wins that match and gets promoted to the Premier League, and the cash flow that happens there. That way is a little bit more straightforward, I suppose, because you're only looking at those next 4 teams. So similarly, as in I think most of the second tier of the European football, the first 2 teams are automatically going up. And then the third team is decided via, in that case, it's sort of like a semifinal and a final. And oftentimes, I think in that instance, because it's 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, you may have many, you could have it so where the 6th place team is way far behind, but you might have it where they're all, a point or 2 away from one another. And of course, it makes for some dramatic entertainment. I do think, of course, it's good to see the 3rd and 4th place teams sort of being put into that place. Effectively for them, they're only playing the semifinal first before the final. But you still have that potential where, there might be a 10-point gap between 3rd place and 8th place by the time the season is done with. And if you're not handling that final kind of 2-leg window when you're playing for a chance to go up, then you're still stuck in Serie B. So it's a really interesting end to the season because it's a very different way of going about and getting points, with it being, really coming down to those 2 matches. So I understand it. I think I
understand it too. I think it makes it a lot more interesting. Yeah. Especially also for Serie A. I think it would be quite more interesting if they introduce something. I know that they're thinking about doing some renovations within the league itself, like the Serie A, but introducing, just to make it simpler, not necessarily go into the complexity of the Europa spots and whatnot, but at least even for relegation, rather than just the bottom 3 go directly down, having introduced some sort of like a play out in Serie A as well would be quite interesting too, because then you get the last X number amount of matches where the mid-table teams have nothing to play for, and sometimes they can get boring. Right? Rather, if you have like a play out, something to play for, and up until the end, it makes it a little bit more, competitive.
Yeah, agreed. It adds a little bit of an intrigue towards the end of the season, and hopefully, at least it gives more, instead of being, okay, we just need to be in 6th and kind of 3rd to 6th doesn't matter. It puts more of a premium on that 3rd and 4th place position and adds a little bit extra there. I think that's what makes the Serie B situation a little bit more interesting in that way, because it really does matter. And I think at least we'll say, thankfully, you're not in the German football tiers, because if anyone's familiar, the 3rd place team in it's called the Zweite Liga, like 2 Bundesliga. For them to get promoted, they actually have to beat the 16th place team in the Bundesliga that same season.
Oh wow!
So imagine that's fighting hard and having a well-placed campaign in the second tier, then you're going up against like in recent seasons, you had juggernaut, like formerly gigantic sides like Schalke towards the bottom of the table, and you have to go as some regional club having to go and beat Schalke in a 2-leg tie. It's a little bit of a different ask there. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic. You have, again, all of these opportunities for at the bottom of the table, even as you mentioned, you talked about Brescia a minute ago, even thinking about Benevento, who look kind of down and out. All those sides are within a couple of matches and maybe some results going the opposite way of being in that 16th and 17th position, with Benevento only being 5 points away from Perugia, and potentially having an opportunity to get a couple of points back. Knock on wood, we'll see if the Grifone in the Grifone derby get it done this week. So it'll be very exciting, and again, hopefully we see some of that similar race to the playoffs for the that's a very American term. I'm not sure if anyone in Italy says that, but looking at the Palermos and the Modenas, and
you can say that in Italian. Now I'm thinking about La Corsa per I playoff.
Yeah.
The race for the playoff. Yeah, you can say it.
Yeah. Because you still have that 8th place position. Palermo's only 3 points off. Como have a few more to go. But a lot of teams are still in the running.
So before we go to the break with our special guest, I wanted to say a couple of things. So first of all, our last 6 matches are this one coming up is Genoa Perugia. We'll talk about it in the second half, but then we have Cittadella. All these ones are like a week apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cittadella away. Then we have Südtirol at home. Then we have Ascoli. Südtirol away. Ascoli at home. Then Frosinone, second last, away. And last but not least, Bari at home. So it's not going to be easy.
No. And not just those last 2 matches too. I think just about all those matches are going to be challenging for sure.
So second thing I wanted to mention was the fact of Primavera. They played on, I believe it was on Tuesday, so the day after we played, and they are still they're trying basically to go promote it to Primavera 1, and they actually did an amazing result. 4 matches left, still first in the league. I think it's 5 points to the second. Correct me if I'm wrong or something like that, but they won 4-0.
Great result.
Consolidating their lead, which is quite important for the Grifoncini.
Mm-hmm.
Last but not less important is we know that Genova has submitted to FIGC the application to be candidate for the Euros 2032. It was admitted by FIGC, and they have submitted 10 stadiums. So Genova is going to be one of the 10 stadiums. So let's hope so.
Crossed.
Yeah, because that means that these funds, and thank you, Matt, for sharing that video that we also shared in the chat. It essentially shows the disaster of most of the stadiums that we have situation in Italy, and if this euro comes into play, a lot of stadiums can basically get reborn.
You have that chance for renovation. Yeah, it could be big.
All right, so let's go to our break, and we'll talk with our special guests coming up. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, and I approve this message. Bentornati, welcome back to La Lanterna podcast on the second half. We have a special guest. He's all the way again from the UK, again, because lately we're having so many people from there, right, Matt?
Some English speakers, I like it.
We have our special guest. He's all the way from England, specifically from London, but we'll open it up definitely to him to introduce himself and what's he all about. So welcome to our pod, Will.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Thank you, Matt. Great to be here. We've been planning for quite a while now, this podcast. So I'm very happy it's come
That's
through.
right. So a little bit because we were busy, a little bit because you were busy, and people
absolutely
don't get confused with our other Will, which he's like your British that lives in Italy now, but this is Will actually living in England. So he's the proper one. No offense to our other Will. Jokes on the side. Will, tell us all about yourself. Like, why did we call you up? But that's all. It's because you're Genoano. So you're Genoano. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Why are you in England? And let's start from there.
Yes, I'm Genoano. Of course, I live in England. I've lived here in London for about 10 years, more or less. But I'm bilingual. I'm half Italian, half English, and my Italian side is from Genoa, from Genova. My grandparents used to live there. That was the connection with Genoa, coming,
Sorry, does that mean that your grandparents actually moved up in England, or?
No, well, my two grumps, I'm technically, I would say half and half, but I'm actually a quarter English and 3/4 Italian. And I was born and raised in Italy, so I'm a little more Italian. But my grandmother who lived there, she was Italian, and my grandfather was English. So I always saw them as the English grandparents, but the parents of my father always lived here in the UK. And then my mother's parents, they live now in Chiavari. They used to live in Genoa for many, many years, and they're both from Genoa. My grandfather was actually from Ronco Scrivia, moved for university. And yeah, I'm here in London because I'm a university student. I'm finishing off actually in a month. I've got my finals. So yeah, all pretty exciting moments. And yeah, I've been Genoano for a long time. Not really, I'm not going to say, I remember when I was 3 years old on my father's shoulders or my mother at the bar, whatever. It wasn't like that for me because I don't really come from a football family. Actually used to play rugby, but yeah,
I guess where did it come from? So where did it start? Where did those red and blue catch you? Because apparently we were hearing from other fans, which is true, and I like to use that.
No, I don't. You don't have to say it though. You don't have to say it out loud. It's fine.
It's the colors that call you.
Yes. I thought, Fabry, you were going to say, because we've had a string of English guests recently and have had great conversations with all of them, but we hear often the draw of the blu cerciati, which I don't really understand from a shirt perspective or anything like that.
No, wait a minute. Wait, okay.
I thought you were going to say something like that.
No. Well, first of all, Will is a proper Genoano. Our last guest, which was a journalist, so he's like unbiased. He went to the match, but apparently people, not everyone, but some that are not Genoani are attracted to those multicolored, as we call in Italian, arlecchino, which is like just
arlecchino, bike ciclisti, we say, the cyclists.
So the cyclists and rumente, call them whatever you want.
Well, the term, it's a very sort of flexible term. There are many terms to be used, but as long as we've never named them, that's fine.
Not truly Genovese, whatever.
No. Everyone, democracy, everyone that chooses what they want with their lives, I guess. So the red and blue, everyone was sort of going with it. So I'm glad you asked. It pretty much came to me quite naturally, I suppose. I was in a pretty soccer oriented school. All my friends, Milan, Inter, Juve, and all that. I used to live in Milan in my childhood. And then I wasn't really connected with football. And I saw the celebration of my friends in the courtyard, 2007 AC Milan Athens, 3 years later, triplete with Mourinho. So it was big, big football community, lots of celebration. Milan in 2010s and mid 2000s, it was pretty much like Real Madrid, Barcelona.
Right.
But I thought, none of that appealed to me for some reason. And I always knew about Genoa Sampdoria because I wasn't really into football a lot. But I always knew about the derby, and I always knew about the Griffin, Genova, and all that. And I was looking at when it was a school trip, I must have been about 12, and I opened the Gazzetta, and there was a result of AC Milan Genoa. It was 2-0 by 2 goals of Ibrahimovic, I think, something like that. And I felt very, very sad. And I sort of had this emotion, but I didn't really understand what it was. And had I known what I was going into, no, I'm kidding. But, I had this. I remember it distinctively, and I thought, wow, okay, I guess this is, I suppose, what it means to be a fan. And from then on, I fell in love with the red and blue colors. But really, I fell in love with football. I really I'm a big, football guy now as well.
Yeah.
And it all is down to Genoa. That's kind of what got me into it. And then my first game at Ferraris was quite late on, but from then on, really, it was just, you know, super supernatural.
Before you go on into that, I just wanted to mention two things. First of all, for who is not close to Italy, when Will mentioned La Gazzetta, it's like the most known and important national sports paper, that typical one. Whoever knows about it, it's the pink one. And the second thing, which I'm sorry, but I have to and want to remark it, is the fact that our Will here said that he felt sad for the team that then he started to root for against the team that had who defines himself as God. So he actually chose the real truth.
Absolutely. I found like through sportsmanship.
I mean? Exactly.
It's always going for the underdog. Always. No matter what. You 2-0, you're like, what's going on? Nah, none of this shining glory with like Scudetti or Champions League. Too easy. Yeah. No. I felt it straight away. I was like, nah, none of that. I mean, Ibrahimovic and Boateng or something like that. But it was one of those weird moments.
That was
with Nocerino doing assists to Ibrahimovic. Was the beginning of a very interesting downfall.
Go on, tell us about your first match. So when you went there, what was the emotions? What do you remember about that match?
I remember it very well because it wasn't too long ago, because integration to Genoa came in quite late. I went with my grandfather to see Genoa Juventus 2014-15 season, so the year that lovely man did not allow us to rightfully compete in the Europa League preliminaries. So, you know, knockout stages. However, it would have been a way to finish that season off. However, that was the first game I went to see, and it was Genoa Juventus 1-0 by Luca Antonini with this horrible goal. Fantastic game, but Perin saved, you know, a whole game of fantastic saves. And it was a huge, big Juventus team, went on to the Champions League final that year against Barcelona. And so it was a big game. But by big, I mean like there was an occasional counter-attack by Genoa, and the rest was like Juventus going for it. Until then it was kind of I was obviously enjoying it. I wasn't in Gradinata Nord or anything. It was my grandfather, so I was in Tribuna.
You never went. Exactly. You never know what your grandpa was into, right? You never know.
Exactly. As I said, not a footballing family, so it was his like third time ever.
Fair enough.
Age 76 or wherever he was back then. So you know exactly that. But I should have specified. Now, occasionally when I do go, when I happen to go get a ticket from someone, and I like to go to Gradinata Nord, of course. But the game itself, wasn't really. It was a great experience, and I saw obviously Ferraris. I finally understood what it was, but then I was very into the game, and I remember there was just big suffering until then that final moment, which I'll never forget. Pure joy.
You get a point there, like, fine, okay, great. It's beautiful if your team always wins. Obviously, from the outside, it becomes a little bit less attractive or whatever, meaning like thinking about the disgusting 9 Scudetti in a row, if I have to say. But the
in black and white.
But it's a good point where you're talking about your first match where we were the underdogs. It was Juventus always attacking, so it was a great defense. And then suddenly it's the underdog that actually goes up, makes that goal, and actually wins that match. I can only imagine those explosions of emotions added to your first match at the Ferraris, seeing those colors for the first time live, which is beyond even the beauty of just seeing it on television or video or wherever you watch it. And then you go there and hear the drums, hear the chants, and hear all that rumbling and almost shaking the grounds under your feet or something like that. And then even winning. Wow, that must have been, and against the lead of the league, or
as you're saying it to it, man, it like brings joy back to my eyes. Like it was, to be honest, it's kind of then that developed a theme for me, like going forward. I mean, it all came down, you know, as the underdog, and that's what I always saw Genoa in Serie A. Ever since I started supporting them, it was that there was always going to be rough times, there was always going to be difficult, but there was always going to be great passion. There was always going to be great noise at Marassi, everybody united, all in one voice. And then hard work always pays off. You're going to suffer like hell. You're going to struggle. It's not going to be attractive, but occasionally you're going to get that spark of joy. And it was certainly the case for that game. And there were there are other specific games like that. But in general, the emotion of a Genoa fan for me, and I mean, I imagine for many of us, was precisely that. It was never something you could quite explain. It was always something that to the eyes of the big boys, and it was certainly the case for me living in Milan and in the UK, where still, you'd occasionally bump into a Luton FC fan or something. Right. They're like, okay, yeah, great. We're sharing something similar in terms of results. But that's the thing, you could never explain it to any of these big boys, but you always knew what it was, because it was always this struggle, but then, the old Griffin always coming out victorious in one way or another, even then it meant, losing or terrible seasons or whatever, because you always knew that there was something to keep on going, and to keep you always drawn into Genoa, and that's what it's always been for me.
Yeah,
no matter
to have the fan base there too, to experience the Marassi, to know that you're not standing in an empty turnstile or something, and you're kind of like there's a whole community there that's in that same thing, and at the very least you're going down a dark alley with probably 30,000 people. So
minimum, and it's going to be way more. Absolutely. That's the thing. It's a sense of unity, and I think I wouldn't want to jump on too much of what's going on this season, but certainly last season with the relegation, I thought that was a great sign of maturity from us, really. Because you always thought, I would have expected that had that gone, had that happened, I would certainly behave that way, or in Serie B, I'm certainly going to go and watch them. All that, that, but then it's actually when it happens and you see that and you realize we were there every single game supporting the team. So I think there's a huge community around Genoa, which I think is just fantastic. Every time I go to the stadium, you're chatting to people, you're celebrating.
If I may imagine this, Matt, he's a Genoano too now, but he living and growing up in the United States and so on, and he has his story that has told us several times, for the fact that he again was surrounded by different folks that were rooting for different teams and no one for Genoa, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to start with pickup soccer and whatnot, and he picked Genoa for different reasons, but sort of like similar to yours. And then his first time in Genova was the last of last year's season, so already relegated, playing against Bologna. But actually, I'll leave it to him. Like, I know you always you've said it a few times, but I'm sure it's something that you'll never ever forget.
Well, it's just incredible. I mean, I didn't know really anything from anything, to be honest with you. I think having the New York club and that connection beforehand over a few seasons really brought me a lot closer to the club, but I had really no clue we were going to be marching through the city after the match or anything else that was going on with it, and just being there.
Well, that's right. I forgot about that. Like, even though we lost, even though we were relegated, in that beautiful march in the city, beautiful.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we went all the way down. It was several hours, and they brought out, I think Marco Rossi was there and maybe did a speech for a minute or something.
For sure.
But it just is a very special thing to be able to be part of that, and to talk to so many people who are just kind of genuinely there for the same reasons. And there aren't very many people you're going to speak with that are there for superficial reasons, because you can't be at this point. People look at you a little bit like you're crazy, like, why would you do this? But at the same time, we're all kind of doing the same thing. So it's a special thing. It's a special club too. I mean, even here in the States, I'll tell people every now and then, like, there are other Italian supporter groups, clubs from maybe famous but not the traditional big six, and you often in those cases are going to find a couple of old people huddled around a small television in a bar with maybe no audio and something, and it's a little bit of a different experience than you ever go to a match with us and we're way too loud and having people turn around and look at what's going on and all that thing. Like, it makes a difference. So,
Will, going back to your experience, was that the first time also for Genova, or was that just the first time for Marassi when you talked about the Genoa Juve match?
No, that was first time for Marassi, Ferraris. No, I was in I mean, my grandparents used to live there, so every weekend I'd go down to Genova, and every summer I go to Sesti Levante. Now my mum lives there permanently.
We do envy you, by the way, even though it can be up to an hour and a half. For us, it's always a little bit more expensive, a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It's a nice little train ride.
Exactly. Just thought I'd throw that in there. By the way, yeah. No, yeah. I was living in Milan, therefore it was very easy to move around and go and see my grandparents the weekend. So no, it was all. I'm very much Ligurian when I go back now. I don't go to Milan so often anymore. My father's still there for work.
One thing before I forget, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You said you go to in the summer. You go to Sesti Levante, has been promoted to Serie C for the first time ever.
Corsari
and again, there are red and blue for colors as well. Different logo, different badge, everything. But just wanted to mention that because it was quite 100%. Something new, and it's first time for them in the, I would say, professional leagues, because they've always been in the lower divisions, right?
Yeah, they absolutely. No, it came up on the news, and I was like, I can't believe it. And yeah, I saw they were doing really successfully this season, dominating Serie D, which I thought, okay, like look at a couple of clubs in Serie D, but surely these are bigger clubs than Sestri Levante, particularly, casually living there, going there for a couple, when I go back to Italy, my mum's there. So I get to see it not during Ferragosto, so not in summer bank holidays when that's flock with tourists. I see what it is. It's like a small Ligurian town, but they absolutely took the league by storm. And yeah, I think it was the first time in like 70 or 80 years or something like that. So it's
unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable. Yeah.
That means that the other side, knock on wood, that they ever do get bankrupt, they're not going to even have a derby against them.
Literally, like no pride for them whatsoever. Should anything, but no, nothing's going to happen to them. They're going to be fine. No, you can't.
Yeah, that's no jinx.
Right. We have to all exactly.
No, it's a jinxing. The Italian superstition.
Exactly saying the right thing. Right.
Funny enough, actually, I say I'm not in a football family. My aunt married 3 years ago now, and he's my uncle now. Love him, great guy. Young, he's my aunt's a little young, so I get to hang out with them, kind of going out for beers and stuff. Super cool. However, yes, he is a fan of the opposite side.
Well, as we say, no one's perfect, right?
No one's perfect. Right. He has his faults. Absolutely. No one's perfect. That's the main fault, the pretty big one. And they now have a, baby, my little cousin, and seeing a little bit of sort of baby gear on, I thought, why would you do that to an innocent little baby like that? Why would you just already start hinting certain things, just let her choose in a future life. Exactly. But it is, I have to say, as much as we joke about it, it is quite interesting and funny to have the opportunity to sort of exchange, because I didn't live in Genoa, so I wouldn't know I know what the derby means, but I literally know the derby as I turn up and I scream at people on the other side of the stadium, booing them and making sure that the choreography or whatever works out better. I mean, certainly not
obviously
organize the game.
There's no competition there anyways, but
there's no competition at all. I've been to 2 derbies in my life, both lost, terrible game. However, in both occasions, didn't start singing until they scored.
Every single time.
Cornelia. Although the second time it happened, it was De Frel's goal after like 52 seconds. So that was a little bit
earlier than normal.
However, no, I don't think there was much competition at all.
We've had terrible luck, honestly.
We've had terrible luck, yes, but it's only fair. And that, they've been building those teams with inexisting funds. So, fair enough. They should have taken advantage about it, and they should have gone further down with it. But
right.
Well, as we say in Italian, tutti i nodi vengono al pettine, which if you had to translate that in English means all the knots come to the comb, because when you're combing your hair and then if there is a knot, it stops because there's an issue, there's a problem, there's something coming up. And now they were making so much fun of us last year, but now something a little bit different is happening to them, and it's not going to happen.
No, absolutely. We'll see you one way or another. Perhaps we'll see them next year, but I don't think so.
I don't think so. have you had contacts with the Genoa Club UK?
Absolutely. I'm actually wearing now wearing the merchandise. Yes, I joined. I was actually in a year abroad last year because I study French, and I was in Canada for a year. I was in Montreal. Yeah. So
not too far not too far. I don't know, but
about three hours. Am I correct? Something like that.
So an hour and a half by plane, or 6 hours, 5 hours by car. You can make it in 3 hours, but
that's doing something speeding. But no, I couldn't remember because I didn't get to see Toronto, unfortunately. But so I was in Montreal for a year abroad, and I came back. And as soon as I came back to London, there's a friend of mine from school. He was a member, and he randomly found him on Facebook. And so I went to see a game, and I knew I was going to stay in London, obviously, because I got to finish my studies and I'm going to stay in London probably after that as well. And yeah, I thought, great, I'll join in straight away as a member. And it's been absolutely fantastic. It's made everything last season in particular, but even this season Serie B and in general, just for me, watching Genoa here abroad has always been, on some website online on my computer, and it's just always so boring, so dull. But I now, I've got the opportunity to go to a pub, go out, see people, meet new people, and also there it was already existed before before I joined, but there's this great community of Genoa fanatics. They're not even all from Liguria, they're not all from Italy. We're about 50 members, something like that. In the group chat, we're much more, but yeah, we're about 50 active members or something like that. But there's always a pretty good turnout. Then it has happened that, you go for a game, there's only like 4 or 5 of us. And then there's another game we walk in, it's like derby game, like packed with people. But it's great. And so I've been in touch. As I said, unfortunately, I missed the last game, but I went to the game before of Regina, and it's been amazing. They're all fantastic people. They're dear friends now. I brought my flatmates a couple of times I brought my mum as well. She came to visit one weekend, and she came to watch a game. Fantastic. Even though she's zero knowledge of football, but also she's starting to get into it this season. I don't know, maybe it's just the winds have changed with Serie B. Everyone's a lot more. We matured a little bit last year, and then this year I feel there's a lot more joy in watching Genoa. I don't know.
Well, it's definitely the second wind after the departure of our former president. If we're able to do this, being relegated and in Serie B and so on, that shows you the potential of what our fan base can really do, right? So even look it up from our perspective too. We basically started our podcast soon after or soon before, I can't remember, the derby with them making fun of us forever, Criscito's missed penalty from the derby last year. But here we are, like getting at least some compliments here and there. It just makes us happy for what we're doing, and always looked up for the fact of being the only, should we call ourselves broadcasters? I don't know what to call it, but anyways, a pod entirely in English about Genoa. A lot of people are actually complimenting us by saying we look up for your pod, not only because it's in English, so it's the only one, but it's also the only news source. It's it makes us proud of what we're doing, and it for the fact of having like this getting larger by the episode, bringing people together and making them feel more at home, or more listening to what they love, or even new fans as well. Thanks to the pod, we've heard, at least for a couple of fans, starting to be one specifically, Eddie. He's from Alabama, and he just was looking for a team for over 20 years and whatnot, and thanks for the pod, and he just fell in love with the colors just from there. So it just makes us proud, I guess, in a way, right?
Absolutely, yeah, you should be, absolutely. And it's so insane. Obviously the community in London that I saw, a lot of them are obviously Genoese, Ligurian, living in London, so it kind of you would expect that they exactly would have joined. There were sort of different groups, and then they joined to become actually Genoa Club UK. So we're open for other people to come in from the rest of the UK to come on the weekends for the game. But that kind of makes sense. However, I was blown away when I walked in, and there was like 4 or 5 members who were English, Scottish, whatever, and And the most insane stories, like, oh yeah, I was in Genoa, saw the shirt, and I thought, yeah, and I've been a fan for like 40 years or something, like, something crazy like that. And so this as well.
No, it's true. Like we had obviously Alex, which was a fantastic guest, telling the stories from his grandparent and actually his great grandfather. It was just like that. That story.
He said it. I heard it on the podcast, and he said at the pub. Yeah, it's mad.
Just incredible. And then we had people like Zach, which he's a pure British, and fell in love with the colors because he's a collector of kits, and that was just like another incredible story as well. It's like it's so just even beautiful to hear all these different stories. It's incredible. Like when we have obviously guests from the opponents. We'll talk about the matches soon, but obviously finding and searching for Genoani around the world. We even I've had Enrico from Vietnam. It's just like, wow. For him, he's always in the future for us because he's like, okay, what day is it for you? Oh, tomorrow? How is tomorrow?
I see.
We've never picked up on Enrico's kit thing, though. Remember the last time we had him on? For like 8 pounds or something.
We have to have him again.
It's like some clearly like aftermarket thing, but it looked like looked better than the ones they're selling at the Castor website. So
share the link. That'd be
exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Let's talk a little bit before we get into match day 33. What are your thoughts on the season so far?
Well, I'd say we're finally, I think overall it's been very positive. I think we're finally seeing what we had hoped would be Genoa's season. And obviously when I say finally, I make it sound like until now it's been an absolute
it's true.
But from it's been very exciting. However, I do think that, quite frankly, I think we personally envision the season going 2 ways, either sort of Frosinone style, dominating the league, relegated, boohoo, let's get straight back up, take the league by storm, and everything's perfect.
By surprise, too.
By surprise, exactly. And to our own surprise, really. Or on the other hand, a season that needed some sort of adjustment, which I think is pretty fair because, yes, other teams look at us like as the team to beat still, match day 33. Match day 32, previous game. Still now, people don't, and other teams are not afraid of us, not afraid where we are in the league, what we're trying to do. People don't care when they play against Genoa. What I've seen so far, it's the team to beat. Because of that, I think it was fair that Genoa had to go through some changes and had to adapt to the situation that it was in and the change of reality, I think, as well. And quite honestly, I think we've done that spectacularly well. There was a brief moment in the season where everything could have turned really, really toxic. And I mean, no disrespect to Blessin. I will have the utmost respect for him. I think he was a man, the right person at the right time, 100%. But then he didn't seem to be fit for the job, my honest opinion. And I think, that was certainly the board's decision as well. Mm-hmm. No disrespect to him. However, I do think that all the problems we had or anything that could have really developed into a serious problem, I think we handled it brilliantly. And also because, when you have a new ownership, I suppose we're open to new ideas, particularly because we would like to detach ourselves from what was the old dynasty, which was, it was always the manager's fault. Or, it was always this little 6 months project. Mm-hmm. And then once you'd sack the manager, like, start over again. But then you'd also, because that's, if that's how you're being led, that's inevitably how you're going to behave. And then you would always develop this thing. And as soon as the games weren't going, you're like, okay, got to get rid of him. Right. As soon as you'd see other names speculating, you're like, oh, great, thank God that's happening. We've got that. And that's, I think, the real toxicity of it all. Mm-hmm. Is that we were then lured into this awful environment. However, 777 to detach themselves from that said, let's do something different. Let's do something new. Add interim manager, Gilardino, and, ad interim mica tanto. And I don't want him as ad interim at all. I mean, he's doing fantastically well. He's brought...
Sorry, by the way, mica tanto means like not that much.
Not that much.
It was like a little bit of more Italian.
Yeah, sorry.
Go on.
Yeah, exactly. Not at all, and gladly so. So yeah, no, I'm really pleased with this season. And then the draw against Como, losing against Parma, whatever. That's all part of the process, exactly. But I think considering who we are, considering the pressures, considering that maybe the technical side of things didn't begin as smoothly as they should have, I think we're in a very good position. And so I'm really happy how it's going. And not long. You need to hold on for these last few games.
6 more. 6 more.
6 more. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. 6 more. And those 2 big games at the end, of course. 3 as well, because Sutril is not.
That's right. Isn't that
it's all in that same period? Yeah. It's insane. It's going to be crazy.
What?
Hopefully. Yeah. The only annoying thing about the draw is just it could have been a win for us, and most spectacularly, it could have also been a draw Südtirol Bari, and within sort of 10 minutes, what could have been +8 became +4. So that's obviously, or something like that. So that's obviously a shame, if buts and maybes. But
it wouldn't be Genoa if we couldn't suffer till the end, right?
I was about to say, I would rather us drop to third and then go back to second on the last.
No, don't say that. We did that already.
No,
we did that already.
It's happening.
Getting it out of the way. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, living in England a long time, you sort of lose that superstitious.
Oh, I know. Matt is actually learning it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as you go along. I think it's a pretty important, it's a fundamental thing about being a football fan in Italy. I think the superstition. It's always.
Yeah, I've caught myself. We typically do like predictions before each match, which half the time spooks our guests because I don't want to say anything. You guys can say something like, don't even ask me to do this.
No.
And there's been a couple where I've been like, okay, I don't think I'm ever going to do that again.
No, we did have Alex. Out of everyone, Alex Pugno having had some predictions, and I was quite surprised because I would have thought one wants to say I'm out of this one, but he was open for it, and he actually kind of guessed it quite right too. So
yeah, that's funny because like comments like mine, he's always like, what are you talking about? Be quiet, shut up. Like, So I'm really surprised that this story's coming out because I'm always getting like told off for being like too English and too like, no, what are you on about? Don't say that. Anyway, no, yeah. And Alex was the one obviously who introduced me to you guys, course. And he's certainly
just take advantage of that. Always have to wanted to say thank you to Alex also for introducing yourself to us, and so that was nice of him.
Absolutely, as soon as he told me.
Matt, did you want to ask any questions before we get into match day 33?
No, I mean, I think Will's covered it pretty well. It's I guess the only thing I'll say in addition to what Will talked about earlier is I think hopefully if things end up working out the way that we stay the course to what's going on, this season was a difficult one because of the challenge of being down, obviously a division, and also having to go through all of the financial kind of debt consolidation and other things that have happened. And so I think it's been a prudent way of 777 approaching the season. Even though we did bring in Coda, we signed quite a bit of players. We were pretty active in January, relatively speaking. We've not done anything that's financially irresponsible either. And I think it makes you feel good at this point of the season to look at where we are. And we still have 6 matches to go. But so far, it looks like the right decisions were made.
No, I'm knocking on wood, anything possible, because it still has to.
Sorry, if I could just say, I mean, obviously, we're all saying, doing our just rituals, and that's very important. We should never stop. However, exactly what Matt was saying, it's on the one hand, it's all about what's going on the pitch. So, we have addressed problem with Blessing, getting Gilardino, not very comfortable on the left, bringing Haps, although he's injured now. But it's also, should worse materialize itself, we've now got solid people who really care about Genoa and want to give a direction to our club. And I think that's the most important thing at the end of all of this. Whenever we all arrive, whatever the goal is, according to 777, I think, with the last, and that I think changed for me personally as well, it changed a lot in this year because they had a lot more to prove this year.
Yeah.
Last year they arrived, it was all flashy and stuff. So we've got Shevchenko, look at us, and we want Genoa to get in the
nice
league.
Instagram
Great.
posts and stuff.
But nice Instagram posts, lovely. But we're still like 19th place, and I'm still looking at Meligoni trying to cross the ball in from God knows why is he still playing? People like that. But they'll make mistakes. They've made mistakes. They'll make many more. But they're giving a direction to Genoa. We're a healthy club. We're a strong club now. And I think we'll be ready for whatever challenge comes forward. Something which was unthinkable and unimaginable with Preziosi. I cannot begin to think where we would be with a relegation with Preziosi.
Relegation? I mean, probably would have been in the same shape and form of what the other ones are happening to them right now, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I enjoy it, joke about it a lot, but I don't, if it ever were to happen, I don't think I'd be celebrating, quite honestly. Let's see how bad it will be, according to...
No, I personally, this is actually a good point that you raised. I would not be celebrating, contrary to many Genoani. And to me, it's like, I would be pleased to finally see Genova represented only by the true and only Genovese team. That's how I would see it. So it's not a celebration. It's like, finally, something.
Justice.
So like, finally that, I don't want to use bad words. That disgusting part of the city's gone. Hopefully not come back, but probably come back. But
I wouldn't mind the dominance for a while, to be honest. Why not?
Personally, great, sure, it's the derby. Even from the outside, the derby is very well seen. Considered one of the best ones in Italy. Fine. Yeah. But truthfully, I don't really care if they're not there, which is what I prefer. Who cares? I'm not going to miss.
Yeah, I would miss the derby, that for sure. But I agree also, if they're not there even, who cares? And particularly because they were in a situation we were in, and, it's not really their fault as a whole fans, but, they were chatting to us when we got relegated.
Well, it did start from their own history, like with that mixture of...
Oh, no, of course. Yeah. It was unthinkable. It just doesn't make sense.
It's a minestrone anyways, the team, right?
It's a big minestrone. It's a big vegetable soup. Exactly. Minestrone. That is
mixture of different things. Like, come on, please.
Yeah, it sometimes works out, but then usually doesn't. But as we said earlier in the podcast, they were, making fun of us when we got relegated, but the situation just got worse and worse and worse for them. So
it's called karma.
Yeah, I guess.
Well,
it's called karma, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Also, we cannot go this podcast without shouting out secret agent Zio Balla, Davide Balla. Again.
Sure.
Secret Balla that goes and kills them 3-2 after they were under away, so at Genova, in our stadium.
Absolutely. With goal by Sam Lammers, who was the man that all summer Preziosi promised to Ballardini, right. You're going to get him. Doesn't get him because he just fancies that he goes to Germany, then he goes to Empoli, goes to Sampdoria. Great choice, by the way, Grande Lammers. Really astute decision-making there in this moment of their history. Scores against Ballardini, and then Ballardini, ice cold with his sunglasses.
Beautiful. Zio Balla, forever.
Zio Balla always comes forever. Zio Balla. I love that man.
Only one match he has ever lost against Sampdoria, and that was when he was with Palermo. But since then, never, ever. And that, again, happened. Absolutely. Anyways, let's quickly talk about match day 33 for Serie B. So it's going to open on Friday with Modena-Parma. We've seen Parma waking up a little bit, starting to edge a little bit the playoffs. But let's see if they're continuously going to be able to do that, because also Modena is not taking things under tone anymore.
Yeah,
it gets the moment. It's for everyone. So it's not only for us. The last six matches, we're going to see, as we saw it from last match also with Como, a lot of teams that are going to be waking up and starting to show different colors compared to before. Next one up is two former, at least one is huge. The other one we've seen lately anyways, also in Serie A. So that's Venezia-Palermo. So that's the first match on Saturday. I think the Lagunari are going to have shown a little bit of, if they don't wake up, they're going to be relegated. And Palermo still edging there, and they can or cannot, we don't know yet. It was not their plan necessary to go to the playoffs for this year, but they're edging it. And we've seen them a few times, even with our guest, the fact that it's not something that they would not be happy about anyways for the playoffs. Then we have Ascoli Südtirol, our Cinderella of Serie B, the fantastic story about the Südtirol. First time in Serie B. It's just beautiful to watch if you look at it from a sportsman perspective.
It's so beautiful. I'm so annoyed that unfortunately we need to check what they're doing and worry about them, because I would love to follow this story. I can't believe they're going this. I mean, it's just insane. I can't believe they're going this far. I never would have thought.
Like, honestly, can you imagine, Oli, just no offense to anyone else, but imagine Frosinone, let's give them already the spot. Then we go through and then they win the playoffs. Can you imagine? Serie A with Frosinone, Südtirol, and Genoa. Anyways,
I mean, that's plausible. It's like Intella is how you pronounce the
Intella, yeah.
They made it Serie B. It's basically if they were to be promoted the following season.
They were that close.
Unbelievable.
A few years
they
back.
were really close. Yeah, very close. Very close. Yeah.
So that was Ascoli Südtirol. Then we have, this is going to be a super match from the bottom, Cosenza Cittadella. Both friends. We have a good friend, Jake, which was, he's going to be actually coming on soon from Cittadella, USA. And our senior guest, which is Raffaello from the Cosenza Club New York. That's going to be quite a tough match. Both super hungry for points. It might be a tripletta, as we say in Italian, as I said a few times on the pod, which all three results can happen.
It's an amazing match. I mean, there's so many matches like this, I feel like, in this match week, but they're both level on points right now. So, if Cosenza win, all of a sudden Cittadella are in the relegation playoff positions anyway. You never know.
This is going to be quite interesting. A tie, I don't know. I mean, they could still just get the points no matter what. Obviously, at this point, the win is better because it helps you a lot faster. But next one, Spal Brescia. This is another interesting match. Still again at the bottom. Brescia seems to have woken up a little bit. And Spal, I guess this is like the last two, if I'm not mistaken, on the table.
It's the I was just looking at the table now. It's the third and second last. But I can't believe this is. I mean, I don't remember that long ago. Benevento, Brescia, Spal, all three Serie A teams. Brescia, I cannot believe the amount of pressure and the chaos that's going on there right now.
Well, we know that if you look at it from management perspective, together with Preziosi and Zamparini, they were like the three worst ever.
Oh yeah, of course. That makes absolute sense. But I mean, it's just kind of always just think that it's, I don't know, because it's such a huge club or something like that. Some things a bit like with us in the end, because whether it's a Gorampande, whether it's just a ugly 0-0, whatever it is, something's going to happen that you're just going to get out of that. I'd be very worried if I were a Brescia fan, to be honest.
It is bizarre, though. I mean, to your point at the beginning of the season, if you would have said either of those three teams get promoted through the playoffs or otherwise, I don't think you'd really be too surprised by that. So to see that potential three of them going.
And the next one, too, is actually the one that I totally forgot that now they're the last one, is Benevento against Regina. Yeah. Now, they were at the beginning of the season one of the teams that could have been contenders, at least for the playoffs. Now being sitting last in the league against Regina, which we know have been having a little bit of trouble, have been waking up a little bit in the last few matches, but with that sort of heavy weight of possibility of 4 points or whatever X amount of points that might be hitting them very soon. So they're trying to catch and collect more points as possible in order to still stay within the playoff race. So that was the next one up, Benevento Regina. Then eyes on deck for Bari Como. We just seen Como. We know what they're capable of, and we want them to do the same thing to Como.
Yeah.
That's already a good Bari.
Bari. Yeah.
Apparently, Jake from Cittadella USA was telling me, you see, these guys just won against Südtirol, and all they do is only talk about you guys. It's like, can you not look at what you need to be doing without worrying about Genoa? Do what you got to do, and then what happens. Anyways, that's going to be quite an interesting match. I'm definitely going to have eyes on that match. Bari Como, we want Como to win.
All costs.
Then it's the derby of the Grifoni. Genoa against Perugia. Perugia is another team that is in desperate need of points. They're edging at the playouts together with Spal, but their form lately has, I don't know, what would you say, not been doing that great lately. It seemed like they were in the bottom for a while. Then with good results, they managed to get up a little bit. Now they got sucked into again in the relegation area after the 2 losses that they just had. Let's hope that they don't wake up suddenly. But again, we are at the Ferraris, we are at the Temple. We have our 12th man, and it's apparently, last I heard, but this was from yesterday's news, so we're recording today on Tuesday, and already yesterday with the season tickets, of course, but we're already at 24,000 spectators. So that's already 4,000 tickets that were sold. From now to Saturday, when is the match, I don't know, we could see another 30,000 because we're getting closer. These are the last 3 matches at home, right?
Yeah,
must be.
Then Cagliari, Frosinone. That's another big match for us. We've heard about Ranieri wanting to catch the second spot, which, unless for miracles, is not going to happen now. But if all go to plans of Ranieri, that's where he has to start to make the points. So we want to see Cagliari win against Frosinone. That's Saturday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here for North America, or in the evening in European time. How do you guys see actually that match?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cagliari, Ranieri has done really a fantastic job, but I think the team, it's certainly been, some of the players they've got there above everyone, Nandez, I think. I mean, it's insane that they've managed to keep him to the cause of Serie B. But I do think they're a team on the rise because they've had to quickly turn their season around if they wanted any chance of getting back to Serie A talks. So obviously go through the playoffs. I don't think this second spot
is achievable.
No,
exactly.
No, I mean, points mathematically, I mean, apart from a superstition. But I do think, I would hope that Cagliari could nick a win precisely like exactly the same as I would hope for Como. Perhaps I would ask a bit too much to both of them, but they're kind of realistic, to be honest, because Frosinone, as they've dominated the league thus far. They've obviously regained their 6-point lead on us, but I think they're a little bit more realistic now. I think they're still a very well balanced team. They're still very, very good, but there was moments where we really thought, oh my gosh, these are insane perfection. Oh, Grosso, what a genius. Sure, great manager, but I think they could probably, losing against Cagliari right now, this Cagliari I don't think is so absurd. And same thing goes for Bari against Como, to be honest. But they'll be very excited after that win against Südtirol, unfortunately. But let's see.
You never know. It does seem a little bit far away from them maybe to make that happen, but I'll say a statistic that maybe will blow your guys' minds. Like somehow Lapadula has scored 5 goals in his last 4 matches.
That's fine.
I wanted to avoid the Lapadula talk completely.
I'm okay with him doing 3 goals against Frosinone and then do 2 whatever. It's fine.
But I think they've had kind of like a relatively challenging run in these past several matches. Obviously, we recently played them about 6 match days ago or so. Also had Südtirol and Regina on that list, as with Pisa. So who knows? I think probably Frosinone will win. But if they do manage it, obviously that would be incredible, of course, for the title race for us, with still plenty of season to play still. But yeah, with a lot of eyes on that match when it takes place this weekend. 18
points for grabs, 6 matches. Still a lot can happen. Obviously, yes. to Will's point just earlier, he said for them to reach us, on the paper it's possible. The likelihood is probably almost impossible. Us as being the second, if you even count to Frosinone even more, but there's like 13 points is a little bit, it starts to be mathematical a little bit unrealistic. So obviously the catch there is for them at least to try to, them as in Cagliari, to try to reach the 3rd and 4th spot in order to play less of the playoffs. So I would say probably at this point, looking how it looks like is to catch Südtirol. It's all up for grabs at this point, to be truthful.
For sure.
Last but not least is Ternana against Pisa. I think Ternana had a little bit higher expectations for their season, which kind of got them a little bit on the darker side. Their bench back and forth with Lucarelli, not Lucarelli. Seems that they have found back with Lucarelli a little bit, but some tough matches were on their way and still. And Pisa, on the other hand, are just at the bare edge, but gained a little lead against Palermo for 3 points on the last spot for the playoffs. So that is going to be another quite interesting one, because Ternana still is only 6 points to Pisa. In 6 matches, anything can really happen. And this is what I was trying to say at the beginning when I was reading out the matches for match day 33. We're going to see colors. And that's also what Raffaello said, if you remember, Matt, from the Genoa Club New York, wherein he was saying at the second half of the league, ritorno, as we say it, we're going to see totally different things and teams that you would never expect waking up. So I would say it's time for our predictions. Let's quickly talk about Genoa Perugia. So we said it's at Marassi at the Ferraris on Saturday. We talked about Haps is not going to be in. From the press conference that Gilardino had, he'd mentioned that he's going to do anything possible to have Bani back because we're going to be missing Vogliacco. So what are your take on the next match?
I think you highlighted one of the key parts. Obviously, we'll all be looking at. Unfortunately, this past match and the match prior, we've not seen as much from Ilsanker. It's kind of been disappointing, actually, with a person of his experience and not really maybe looking as strong. Not having Vogliacco is, I think, actually a kind of a blow in a way. I know, obviously, he's had maybe performed above expectations, but he's really been, I think, he takes a lot of initiative as a defender. You know, he's pretty aggressive. He's assertive on the ball or in pressing the ball. And we're going to
let me throw you a curveball there for you to continue on your thought.
Yes,
I was a guest at Pianeta Genoa, and we were talking about it. And essentially, what they're saying, and I couldn't disagree with them. And essentially, they said Ilsanker does a lot well as a central, rather than the right side.
Yes, as in the middle. Yeah. That would make a lot of sense. Actually, I could see that working. I mean, in Bani, I think we've played him before, if I'm not mistaken, in one of those positions. I want to say on the right in the back three. I don't really recall, to be honest, but I feel like there's been moments where he's been not that kind of anchor person on the right or the left. But it's a weird match because our form, obviously, at home has been spectacular under Gila. And you want to say how many consecutive points we've collected at home. And it kind of makes you feel a little bit strange about this game, especially with that and with somewhat of a personnel question mark ahead of this one. I'm not sure how I would exactly rate the match. I don't know really anyone from Perugia that would be overly cause concern for Genoa fans, but it is one of those games that feels like maybe you could have sort of one of the things I'm most worried about is we've had a couple of matches now. We saw it in Como where we kind of maybe gave up a victory that we had in hand. The match before against Regina, a better opponent, but Regina, we were in a way fortunate to end up with 3 points in that match. And so you worry a little bit if we were able to get on top of the match early on, do we kind of fall back late a little bit and maybe we also again don't get all 3 points? I wouldn't be totally surprised to see a 1-1 outcome or something similar. Of course, none of us would want to see that, but we've seen worse results. And even under Gila, I think there are moments where you kind of have some of those games, you shrug your shoulders and it happens and you move on. But I wouldn't say we're at all in a funk right now, but I could see the match ending in a surprise 1-1 draw.
So before you finalize your 1-1,
yeah,
let me remind you about what happened. It's not the same thing, but similar.
Yeah,
to what happened against Parma and the strigliata, as we say in Italian. So when Gilardino goes in the locker rooms and tell basically to the players off of what happened, and you saw the reaction after that. So you're telling me that even after he for sure went to the locker room and told them off like crazy, that there's not going to be any reaction?
I can't tell you there's a logical way to feel concerned about this game as a Genoa fan. I think the only way you can say it is the fact that we did not win the reverse fixture of this match all the way back in November, although that was towards the very end of Blessing's tenure.
Those are 4 points that we missed out on.
That was a terrible run. Those 2 games were horrendous. I don't think there's really a ton of logic in it, but there's something about this game for me that gives me kind of the creeps. I don't know what it is. I think Genoa have definitely the talent and the squad and the manager to get a result at home. We're more than capable, but something about this fixture feels kind of strange to me.
So you're still with the 1-1?
I think so.
Who's our goal scorer?
I think, surprising choice. I do think Cotto will again be on the score sheet. He's been in better form recently, and I imagine we'll be kind of funneling our traffic through him, similar to how we've done in recent games. So
no more Aramu, #. Will, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I began thinking about this game as our recent form has just been too good. Things are working really well with Gilardino now.
This is a true Genoano coming out, huh?
Yeah,
go on.
However, listening to Matt's analysis, to be honest, I must say, yes, some of these, the last results of Gilardino, they have been great. We have consolidated as a team. The system is a lot more fluid, et cetera, a lot more solid at the back. But still, what happened at Como is, I didn't see the game, unfortunately, but I did see from the highlights and speaking to people, you do get the sense that we did throw away that win. Now, really, I think it's going to be a big test for us to sort of make sure that it's just a result that happens, that you can't always win, you can't always have what you plan, what you think ahead. Sometimes on the pitch things are much different. With Perugia, having said that, I do think I didn't fear them a lot, but to be honest, it can also be quite realistic as sort of 1-0. I'm going to go maybe 2-0 victory, but not particularly sort of Brescia style where we turned up and sort of had everything under control. I think it's going to be something a bit like maybe what we saw against Palermo. Maybe a little less quality from Perugia, simply because they're playing with a lot more, they're a lot more desperate, obviously, as we mentioned earlier. They're trying to get out of the situation, and they have a very experienced manager in Fabrizio Castori, who did one of the greatest stories of ever, bringing Carpi in Serie A.
That's right.
Yeah, with the 25th. Yeah. 15-16 was the season in Serie A, so 14-15 was the Serie B. So yeah, I'm going to go with the 2-0. I still think, I really hope we recover Bani, because if we don't, it's going to have to be, another 4. I don't remember what we play now if we don't play through.
We would, yeah. Would we bring in, is there anybody from the youth academy that would come in?
There might. I think
there might. I mean, when we bought Bocci,
right,
at Bari, that was very brave.
That was super.
Okay, so brave.
with plenty of a match to play too.
I do not want. I mean, to be honest, he was super brave. I wouldn't have wanted this kid to turn up at the San Nicola, arguably after Cagliari away, probably the hardest away game of the season, just how bad he was. And he did really well. He almost scored a goal. Yeah. Missed a chance in front of the box.
Yeah. Well, Gilardino knows him very well too, right?
Yeah. But I would be a little bit skeptical for a centre-back in a back three this point in the season, just drawn against Como, playing against a team that still, wants to stay in Serie B at all costs. I would be a little bit skeptical.
It's a weird amount of pressure, I think, to put on a young player, because I think in that system you could make a mistake and just it'll haunt you.
90 minutes as well.
Right.
Yeah, I would rather go back to the back four, which then I can't remember how the rest of the pitch plays out. It's like 4-3-1-2 or something like that.
Yeah, the 4-3-2-1, 4-3-1-2.
4-3-2, I would rather thankfully, on the other hand, you can look at it, it's against Perugia, and for instance, not that game against Bari, we're not, or Südtirol or Frosinone even, it's still a team that the quality of our offensive players really must take the lead here. And at the back, we sort of need to try and stay solid as much as we can, and to avoid what happened at Como, really. But yeah, I'm going to go 2-0.
And who's on your score sheet?
I would throw in Korda again, and because I see it going, not being particularly, maybe a little bit blocked for a little while, I do see a goal of like Yael or something like that, comes on and score.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think is a very underestimated player. He has scored some pretty important goals. And he's a very important player,
Kind of due for one, actually. It's been a bit since he's got a score sheet.
I agree with all of you guys. As I mentioned also before, my biggest dilemma is more on the back. As we mentioned also in the first half, based on Gilardino's comments from the press conference, there was some disconnect that happened against Como. And I still believe that he's a thinker. He knows and he will analyze to the nth of what happened there for it not to happen again. The only concern obviously is on the people that are available. Either Vigliacco, we know it's not going to be there. We talked about Bani. He did mention that he's going to do anything possible. Bani was already rumored to be able to perhaps being joined, but I'm thinking that they probably cautionary kept him at home, but not as a starting lineup. I still can see Gabriele Calvani from our our youth team being called up again. He's definitely a talent that we will be hearing about him often and more in the next future. You're right for the fact that depending on how he sees fit and who is coming in and whatnot, we might see the change in the formation from the 3-5-2, which we were totally against in the past, but now we're with Gilardino, where we're reborn a 3-5-2ers.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in perhaps based on Chito a little bit more put towards the back because he's a little bit older. And again, we have to also think about what's his form as well, because after that fall on his shoulder, I don't really know also what could come with him. Like, will he be able to be called up or not? And hopefully he is, because all we need is like the end of the season to have all the back called out and have all Primavera coming in to replace. We definitely don't want that. I do agree with you guys that I see that actually more with Will. I see it being a tight win, not necessarily a Brescia goleada, but at the same time, I do see a reaction from the team. The players are going to, as even Coda said at the microphones of Sky Sport, this is not what we wanted, and we just need to be tight again and go back to what we wanted to be. So I do see that even though they're going to be coming at Genova with, as we say in Italian, a pullman in front of the goal to stop all the shots and whatnot, which is a coach bus, right? The Como showed certain great aspects, but some lack of others, concentration, the fact that we had 2 or 3 or even more players that had the fever/flu, and hopefully that's not going to happen. So they're not going to like mingle too much and kiss each other and get all these germs. But it's Saturday right now. It's Tuesday, and we want it's 4 days left for preparation. I think they're pumped. They know what's at stake here. Yeah. They know it's the last 6. No more mistakes can be done. Both from the coach side and the players, I do see a nice clean 2-0. I do not see any goals being conceded, and I kind of have to say Coda and Gudmundsson are going to be the 2 goal scorers, because they were the 2 best ones also in the first half with Como, and I think together they just play perfectly.
I was also thinking Gudmundsson. I was torn between Yellow and Gudmundsson, but I
think at the end of the season we're going to have both 2 players in the double digits. All right, so I guess we're at a wrap. Shall I say, if anybody wants to reach out to you, Will, how can they reach out to you?
Well, I mean, I'm on social media, on Instagram. As you saw, a bit problematic because William Adams.
There's so many. We'll tag you definitely in the pods.
Please tag me. 100%. I'm also on Facebook, down as William Adams. But I followed you guys on Instagram and on Facebook, so hopefully then that should be quite easy to communicate in the future.
We'll definitely add you to our English chat if you want. We have an English chat with a whole bunch of people now. I can't even remember how many. I know you guys have one also for the Genoa Club UK, but we've created this new chat. We're calling it We Are Genoa on WhatsApp, and we'll definitely add you there as well. Remember, you have another contender which is called Will as well. But
I was a bit confused at the beginning of the podcast. I didn't know what was going on, but it's story of my life. Always been other Wills around, so
that's all right. So thank you very much for being a part of this podcast. We really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you. We'll definitely have you again, and definitely we'll chat even more and more on the chat.
Cheers, guys. It's been great fun. I always wanted to do a podcast, and it was great to talk about Genoa and the opportunity. And,
always, right?
Exactly.
Take it. I love it.
So as I always say, everybody can please drop us comments, likes, and whatnot on our social media platforms. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa.
Forza Genoa. Dai.
You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.